welcome back to Thursday Night Live. We have an amazing Wendy. Now, you've met her son, Colin, who talked to us about carpentry. You've met her husband, Mike, who talked to us about Reiki and some other wonderful things. And this is the wonderful Wendy. She is the engine that makes those two tick. Without her, they would be nothing, honest to God. They thrive because of her. She is the engine that makes them tick. And she is a wonderful woman. She is an author. She is a mother. She also has been 30 years in Ontario Works, which I believe in the States is welfare or social assistance. I'm not sure what it's called. And she has done like just wonderful things. She has an award that she hands out every year to a deserving student at a university. And she's just a great person, all around person, and my best friend for probably 32 years. I can't remember. She has propped me up so many times I can't count. She saved me through my divorce, and I can't say enough positive things about her. She is a wonderful woman. And so this is Wendy, and I think where we should start is we should start with her book. She has been in a collaborative book writing session for 3 different books. And Wendy, if you could tell us a little bit about each book, and we'll start there.
Sure. Thank you guys for having me on. Yes, and you're right, James. I think we are going on 33 years friendship.
That's almost as old as I am.
Yeah, she's rethinking
it. Wild.
This might be the last day that we're friends.
Yeah. So actually I'm on, I think, my 5th book.
Oh.
That's launching this month. Like, I think it's like you can order it now, and I don't have copies of it yet. I'm waiting for those to come, but I think it's at the print. It might be actually printed.
Wait a second, Wendy. Is this our first product launch, James? Like, is this our first
product launch
announcement of publication? What is going on here, folks? Look at that.
Yeah.
Hey. Awesome.
Yeah. This is the moment that we've all been waiting for. This is her first book launch, her first book interview for the launch of the upcoming book called
What a Gift.
Wow.
And Wendy is a gift, so it all fits.
The first of the book tour.
Yeah.
Here we go. That's cool.
I love it. That's awesome. That's perfect. Okay, sorry I interjected.
That's okay. So the first book I wrote in is called Sharing. Get the camera right. Yep. So sharing our stories, ourselves, our success. So this started, all of the books actually were with a girl, Lisa Browning from Guelph area. So she is big on mental health, promoting mental health. She publishes, edited, and formats everything, all the books herself, and she gets a local printer in Guelph to print them all. So she wanted to create a book where women come together and share their stories, basically empowerment stories, their true life stories, and just sharing them around the world so people feel less alone. And it's about, what we overcame, where we are now, different ways of getting there. So this book was written by 24 women from around the world, actually. And funny enough, we wanted to launch it for December 6th in honor of the Montreal Massacre vigils that take place every year. So that was our launch date, was December 6th, 2016, I believe. 2016. Yeah, 2016, I think it was. So she had people, they come and go and like wanted to write, and then something fell apart and then they couldn't. She got different people coming on. It ended up being 24 women, which is the exact number of the women that were massacred in Montreal.
Wow.
So weird coincidence. So we we all started writing our stories, and we had no idea what everyone else was writing about. We didn't kind of share that information ahead of time. We created a Facebook page so we could support each other throughout the process, and just, if we were stuck just starting to write, if we were stuck in the middle, if we were stuck, at whatever point with writing. So, because it took probably about 4 months for all of us to write our stories and get it to Lisa to get edited and get the book formatted and whatnot. So we covered, not one of us, I don't think, covered the same story as somebody else, the same topic. So in this book, we covered everything from childhood abuse, spousal abuse, addictions, mental health, child loss, different other mental health issues, anorexia, divorce, alcoholism, all kinds of things. So we just kind of shared and encouraged everybody throughout the writing process to, keep going. You've got this, just encouraging everybody to write their stories and share them. For me, so I connected with Lisa Browning, who started this book, through my cousin. So Lisa had posted, do you have a story to tell? Would it inspire others? And, do you have a charity that you are partial to and would like to share with? So I said, yes, I'd like to. One of the first books, so I wrote about childhood sexual abuse. I'm a survivor. And the first book that I read was called Courage to Heal. And it was written in such plain language and real life. Like, I just felt like I was reading about myself. And it was like, you know what? I'm not alone. I'm not crazy. Everything I'm going through, everything I'm thinking, everything I'm feeling is real. It's not made up in my head. And it just felt so good to read it, to think that, okay, I'm not the only one that feels like this. So that was my motivation to share my story, is that, if I could touch one other person to not feel alone, then I did my job. So for the charity, this book, the first volume, I think she's on volume 8 or 9 now. So this volume, we all chose a charity that we were passionate about and we wanted to share the profits with. We had high hopes. We didn't really get any profits from the book, but I didn't have a charity that I was passionate about. And I also didn't want to pick a charity where, the CEO is making, $100 million a year. And that's the last thing I wanted, was to our profits to be pocketed in someone's pocket. I wanted it to go to somebody in need and really to a good cause. So with collaboration with James and my husband, Mike, we came up with creating our own charity. So with the help of James and Mike, we created an award that would be given out to a high school graduating student. And I did it for Eastview Secondary School in Barrie, where both my kids graduated from. And so I made the criteria that it was for a graduating female student who persevered through life's challenges. Didn't matter what it was about. Didn't matter how long it took her to get to her grade 12 graduation. Didn't matter what her grades were. If she passed with 51 or 91, I didn't care. I just wanted her to know that she worked hard and she deserves to be recognized. And whether it took her 4 years or 6 years, she persevered and made it to her grade 12 graduation. Right. So I met with the high school. I let the guidance counselors and teachers choose the student because they work with them every day. They know them. I didn't want them to have to write me a story or an essay for me to have to pick one. Right. So I let them pick one. So every year they always reach out to see if I want to still give my award, and then they let me know who they've selected. So they actually collaborate now, all the teachers and guidance. Maybe even the office staff collaborate and they pick a student who meets my criteria. So the first award, I was lucky enough to present it when my youngest son, Dylan, graduated from that school. So it was kind of cool to be there, my son graduating, and my first award was being given.
Awesome.
So I do up a certificate for her in a frame. I give her a copy of her book. I've got a bunch of copies that I've pre-purchased so that I have them for the next 20, 30 years. So she gets a copy of the book that I wrote in. I mean, there's other volumes of this book, but I wanted to make sure they got a copy of what I wrote in. And I was delivering it at graduation, but I felt actually the first year that I couldn't do it, that the award recipient couldn't attend graduation. So I met her at the school and presented to her in person. And I really liked that because I had more time with her and I could tell her about the book, tell her how the award became, and just a little bit of more background rather than being up on stage for 30 seconds and it's like, here you go, congratulations, you know, that's the end of that. So now that's what I do every year. I don't go to graduation. I present it to her at the school. So then like I said, I can tell her a little bit. Sometimes I get more of a story from her as to like what's happening in her life, what she's been going through, how she made it to her graduation. And so I give her a copy of my book, a certificate in a frame, and $100 to put towards, I told her, whatever you want. You want to buy clothes for school, you want to buy whatever, doesn't matter to me. You spend it on whatever you want and, you made it to your graduation and that's something we're celebrating. And honestly, it brings me so much joy to do it. And I've received some emails from some of the girls afterwards saying like, I can't tell you how much this means to me. You have no idea. There's like the last student, I just presented my 9th award. So even though we don't have proceeds from the book, I still give my award. And the last student was like, I was 2 steps away from giving up, and then I found out I'm getting this award and it just, pushed me to get to the end. And, it's like to hear those things of how much my award means to them, even though it's pretty small, it's big in other ways. And so I don't have any plans to stop doing it. So that's the first volume. Like I said, I think Lisa's on volume 8 or 9. I'm not even sure. So this one was written by men. The second volume was this was written by women, sorry. Second book was written by men. And the third was women again. And I believe the fourth was men again. And now I think it's a mixture. She just, whoever wants to come forward and share their stories. So they're pretty heavy books because they get into some pretty heavy details. But there's always good endings, that it's always talking about where we are now, what we've done, yeah. So that's that book.
That's amazing. There's a ton to talk about. I think my Wi-Fi is not going great, so hopefully my voice is in time with something. But no, that's amazing. Like the award that you give out every year is like super impressive. Like I get you think it's a small thing, but when someone who, like I know from the work I do, when someone who has never been recognized for anything they've ever done, like it doesn't matter what they've done, whether they've been challenged, whether they whatever they do, when they finally get recognized, man, that's a beautiful thing, and it drives them forward, and you're literally changing someone's life because of it. And I think that's amazing, first of all. And second of all, like, so I did have the opportunity to read your story, and when I read it, I didn't know it at the time because you kept that a tight-knit secret about what happened to you and what you survived. And if anyone out there who's watching this wants to read a story, I would suggest you read this. It's very well written. It's very emotional, though. I was teary-eyed by the time I finished reading it, and I believe I called Wendy right away and we chatted because I had no idea. So we should probably keep talking about your books, but I would be interested in talking about your experience and like it's such a hard thing for someone to share. I don't know how you did that. I guess, which would be helpful to maybe our profiteers out there who have survived something and haven't shared it with anyone. You know what I mean? But that might be too deep to start jumping right now. So I don't know what to do here.
Well, yeah, I can share the rest of the books because it's all my story still. It's all, the same story. So I can tell you about the books, and then yeah, for sure, let's talk about that.
Okay, so what's next? What's the next?
So I don't even remember the order of them, but this one is called Telling Your Story, Speaking Your Truth, A Path to Empowerment. So it's just a smaller book, just a little short stories. And this was, I have to remind myself. I think this was just another small book that Lisa wanted to put out for people sharing their stories and empowering others to tell their stories. And that's kind of what sort of her mission is to get stories out there and get people sharing, talking about mental health and uplifting others. And, we're all in this together, and everyone has a story, right? No matter what our backgrounds are, we all have a story to tell. Some are heavier than others, but nonetheless, we all have a story. And it's amazing. The more you talk to people, the more you find out about, like you said, you had no idea what I went through. And, I was really good at hiding that. And we can get into that later. She also did this one. It's called You're Not Alone. Again, the same kind of concept. And this is 52 stories of hope. So again, a little bit shorter stories. But throughout all these books, I shared my same story of childhood sexual abuse. This one she did for all the proceeds went to Hospice Wellington. That's where her father was at the end of his life. And so she wanted to do something to help support them and the good work that they do. Many of us have hospices around. Yeah. So she wanted to share some profits with them and let them continue doing the work that they do. So I volunteered. These all volunteer. Some of the books, cost me to help to, get publishing done. There's a small cost, but then we can buy the books, and I can sell, like the original book, I can sell at a higher cost than the publishing cost, and I can put it towards my awards if I want to. Some books I've given away. Just depends on the situation. And then this one is called With Open Hearts, Stories of Gratitude and Inspiration. So I lied, they're not all the same. This one is quite different. So she asked about if we had someone or something that inspired us or we are grateful for. So in this book, I wrote about...
That's the book that you wrote about me?
Yeah.
That's going to be awesome. Pat, we're going to have to buy this book because it's going to be all about me.
All about it.
I'm sorry to tell you.
What?
But this one I wrote about my grandmother.
No doubt.
My grandmother will be 93 years old, 94 in April. And, she's one of my best friends. And she's an awesome person. Mm-hmm. She lives life to the fullest. She tells it the way it is. She's not your typical grandma. She likes her drink. She likes rye or beer.
Yes, she does.
She could probably drink all of her great-grandchildren under the table. She loves having a good time. She loves talking to people. She loves making food. She's very well known for her bread pudding and rice pudding. Mm-hmm. And I just wanted to recognize her and write about her because I'm super grateful for her, and I'm super grateful that I still have my grandma here in this life.
That's fantastic.
Absolutely, yeah. Wild.
So that's those books, and the fifth book is just launching this month,
Right.
and it's called What a Gift, and it's all about, again, sharing our stories of abuse, addictions, things like that. So it's I went into more detail on this book about my story, but then I also went into greater detail about my award because I felt, that's my gift, that I shared my story, and presenting my award every year makes it a little bit easier to talk about it and to tell my story, and to share it. It's still difficult. It's still I'm not sure that it'll ever not be difficult. And I talked about addictions too, that, everybody thinks about addictions that, I'm addicted to smoking, I'm addicted to drugs, I'm addicted to alcohol, gambling, all those common addictions. But I talk about my addiction was creating and presenting my life to others to make it appear like it was absolutely perfect.
Right.
There's nothing wrong. I'm good. I don't have anything wrong with me. My life was amazing. And because I didn't want anybody to know. Because I felt, I never had a lot of friends growing up, but I felt like if people knew, number one, who would believe me over an adult, right? And that's most people don't share their stories because either they were threatened or they're just like, who's going to believe a child over an adult?
Yeah.
But then it's also about people believing you, period. Like, who's going to believe my story? And who wants to be a friend with someone that's broken?
Right.
So, I just kept all those broken pieces inside and didn't talk about them. And I never told anyone. My abuse happened between the ages of 11 and 13. And the first person I told was Mike, my husband, who was my boyfriend at the time. So I was like 19, maybe 20 when I told him. And he was the first person I ever told. And I really didn't tell anyone else until I was writing in my book. So I kind of went like super big by, sharing my story to the world. Because this book, the first volume, we had writers from Canada, the US, England, and Australia. So this book has been sent around the world. So yeah, and I just wanted to, like I said, the first book I read, Courage to Heal, I just wanted a little piece of that. I wanted, to let other people know, other girls know that they are not alone, and, to talk about it. And so you don't feel alone. You don't have to suffer in silence. And let's come together and share. And that book too is where my very first tattoo came from. I don't know if you can see it very well.
Oh yeah.
So it's a blue butterfly, and it says, "I am enough." Mm-hmm. So in our chat on the Facebook group with our first book, sharing and with the other writers, one of the girls has quite a few tattoos, and she's like, one of the conversations was talking about, we are enough, we are worthy, all that stuff. And she said, oh, I know what my next tattoo is going to be. And she's like, I am enough. And that just hit me hard. And if you asked me like 10 years ago, I'm like, there is no way I'm getting a tattoo ever. Not going to do it. And I decided I needed that written on me somewhere where I could see it every single day. I didn't want it like on my back. I wanted to see that every single day. So I was going to get it like, really tiny and whatever. And when I went to do it, the artist was, she did a couple of things. My son Dylan actually found this butterfly for me. And so she did a couple of different ways. And she's like, you will know as soon as I place it wherever on your body, you will know when it's the right spot.
Right.
And she was not kidding. When she placed it here and had it like bigger than I anticipated, like it honestly brought tears to my eyes. I'm like, that's it. I want it there. And Mike was like, are you sure? Like, are you sure that's where you want it? Like, that's pretty bold, putting it like right there on your forearm. I'm like, yep, 100%. That's where I want it. And I don't regret that at all.
No, well, it's a beautiful tattoo and it so suits you. And I know from some of the things we've done together that is a recurring theme in your life, is whether or not you're enough. I remember that we did with Denise, who the profiteers know. They met Denise. Denise did this spiritual kind of journey for us, where we did this a lot of wonderful things. But then it was we were to write on a piece of paper and then burn it to like release it. And I remember that was Wendy's, was "Am I Enough?" And like everyone in the room was like, "What are you talking about? You're way more than enough. You're incredible. You're terrific." But it's funny. I do mention the profiteers. Your internal voices fool you. They lie to you. They convince you, because whether they're like previous family members that are talking in your head, or previous friends when you're in school, or job coworkers or whatever, it gets in your head and it starts telling you stuff like you're not enough, or that you're ugly, or that you're fat, and then you start believing it. And even though, like someone incredible like Wendy I have known for, like we've said, 33 years, and I have never once thought she wasn't enough. Like like you've met her family, you've heard a little bit about what she's done in life. Like, God, she's amazing. And to come out with a story that she tells is also incredible. So for her to think she's not enough is just, it has always boggled my mind. But then she tells me the same thing. So you never know. But like you said, so you were saying, so up until 2016, and I knew you since it'd be 90, I think, or 89, somewhere around there, 1989. I'm aging us a lot. I've known you. We've talked about kids. We've talked about family. We've gone through lost parents. We've gone through raising children, tragedies. And at no point did I know anything about it. And when it did came out, I know that you were talking about, you were worried about what your friends would think. And I was more about, oh my God, I can't believe you held that in for so long. The strength of mind and the strength of power that you must have to deal with that and hold that in for so long, to me, is incredible. And I thought you were more, not less, when you told me that story, just so you know. Because I remember you mentioned you were worried about what your friends thought. And I'm telling you right now, I can't imagine any of your friends not believing that you're more, not less. It's incredible. I don't know how you tell the story. Like, so I am a survivor of something that happened in my tweens around the same time as you. It wasn't a family member. But I can't tell the story. Like, I talked to you earlier before this, and I said, oh, I'm going to tell my story. It's going to be, you are the only person I've told my story to, Wendy. And that was like this week, I believe. I just don't know. Like, so as a man, like you said, it feels like I would be lesser if I told it. And I don't think I can. So I'm not going to. But so what I'm asking you is that, so you've inspired other people. I'm 100% sure anyone who's read that book has been inspired. But how do you get past that? How do you get past the fact that you worry about what other people think, or you worry about you share the story and people think that, oh, well, that's nothing, or You know, I don't know if any of that makes sense.
Yeah. And honestly, I don't know how to answer that because I'm still working on it.
Right.
And, you spend your whole life, like I said, growing up, elementary school, I really only had one friend who I'm still friends with today. She's like my best friend ever. We've been friends since we met on the first day of kindergarten, and we've been friends ever since. And even she was shocked. She had no idea my story, and she's like, "Why didn't you tell me that? Like, you would have moved into my house, and I would have brought you home with me." And you
Yeah.
know, um, and there's still lots of times like I don't share. If somebody happens to mention, I mean, child abuse is in the news all the time, right? There's like
Absolutely.
many, many times that topic comes up. And and I would probably guesstimate, at least 75% of the time I still stay quiet. I'm still not there to say, I was that kid. And I think it's just like for me, it was, timing. And this book, maybe at the start, it was kind of, I was still hiding behind the book. It wasn't me telling the
Right.
story.
Yeah.
Uh, I can write to my heart's content. I could, I don't know how long I could write for. I could pour my heart out to
Yeah.
anybody on paper,
Right.
but to talk face to face, like even like this today is difficult for me because it's like, I don't know. I guess it's kind of, I kind of feel like sometimes there's like a banner on my forehead that, I'm broken. I'm a survivor of childhood sexual abuse. And, don't be friends with me because I'm broken.
Yeah.
And I've never been a crowd person. I've never been like, I don't like the attention on me. Um, that freaks me out. Something small like this, it doesn't, I mean, it's still hard to do, but it doesn't bother me as much and because I don't like talking about myself,
Yeah.
and I'm like, I've spent my whole life giving to other people and making sure they're okay, making sure they have everything they need, and part of that was, if I stopped doing, and like if I just sit and relax, Mike used to get mad at me because we would sit to watch a movie and I'd be up and down 10, 15 times. And he'd pause the movie every time. And finally I'm like, you know what? If I want you to pause it, I'll ask you to pause it. But otherwise, just keep going.
Yeah.
Because if I sat for too long, my brain would take me to places I didn't want to go.
Yeah.
So it's like, let's just keep busy until I went to bed.
Yeah.
And then I didn't have to go to those places.
Mm-hmm.
So that's how I lived my life. It was just, taking care of everybody else. And I didn't matter. I had everything I needed because I had my husband, I had my kids, and I had my good friends, and that's all I needed.
Mm-hmm.
And, I had a good job. And I had actually a coworker tell me I was friends with this woman. We ended up, becoming good friends at the time. And we had a mutual coworker, and I had her come up to me and say, can I talk to you for a second? She's like, I just want you to know, like, your relationship you have with this other person. I would long for something like that. And she's like, I just feel like you have had this rock star life.
Right.
And I think she was super jealous of
Yeah.
what she thought my life was and this friendship that I had created. And I stopped her and I'm like, I wasn't ready to share. I hadn't done the book yet, and I we weren't friends, so we didn't really have any relationship, so I didn't want to share with her. But I'm like, I can tell you that that is the furthest thing from the truth. But that's that was my intention in life. That was what I created. And I told her, I said, apparently I'm really good at it because you believe it. Like, I made it so that everyone believed it. Even you, James, as close as we were and still are.
I can't even tell you how close we were. I had no idea.
I didn't tell you, and I couldn't tell anybody.
No.
Because that was, I just kept it buried. And it's amazing. You know, at the time I thought it was easy. This is the easiest way to live. Bury it. Don't talk about it. It doesn't exist. It never happened. Yeah. It's not there. Versus telling somebody or many people about your story. And I can tell you now that I've shared my story, living like that was so much harder than telling my story.
Right.
So
it's better to let it out to people is what you're saying. Because, so I understand what you're saying. Like, it felt, so it almost feels like when you're helping everyone, when you're like taking care of your kids, taking care of your, well, in my case, wife, and always being there for your friends, like overboard there for your friends. It's not normal there for your friends. Like, you and I are similar in that way. We go a little bit above beyond, right? Yeah. It filled in the space, and it almost felt, to me, this is what my feeling was, that I was more worthy, that I had a purpose, that I was liked, and that I wasn't scarred, you know, like it was distracting. Like you said, very, very distracting. It was good to be busy. Yeah. And it's still, to a certain extent, good to be busy. I'm busy all the time. So I understand what you're saying there, but to get to the point where you share the story with people, and so I've had the similar situation where people are like, "Oh man, you're killing it, you're a rock star," and all that stuff. And I'm like, God, if you could see behind my acting skills, you would have a clue. You know, there's times I'm crying in my bed, or I'm crying, like I've shared with the profiteers, so they know this. You know, like I'm in the bathtub crying because, you know, I suffer from depression sometimes, and it's hardcore and it's real, but no one else gets to see it. I don't share it with people. Now I'm starting to, because I'm on this, but so I get what you say. Like, I've literally had people say, "Wow, I wish I could occupy a room like you do." I'm like, when I walk in a room, I'm fucking terrified. I am socially anxious. I don't know what to do with myself. I don't know how, but outside people are like, you glide across the room. I'm like, it's because I built this personification that nothing can touch me. Nothing can hurt me. Nothing, you know, like I'm manly, and I'm not, but I pretend, you know, Pat's seen it. And so I get the misconception that some people can have. What I don't understand is where you get to, and I get that. So I've shared stories with my therapist, not this. My therapist doesn't know this, but I've shared other stories about my marriage and all that stuff. And it always feels better to get it off your chest. But then there's this, and this is a little bit more, I don't know. I don't have an answer for it, but it's a little bit more. And so for you to share, that's amazing. And so you're saying a book is the reason you shared it. Is that the reason, or was it something else? Like, you shared with your husband, of course, because you love him. Like, we had Mike on. He's like my other best friend, wonderful man, also got me through my divorce. But so was it the book, or was it something before the book? How did you get the book? I don't know. Like, what was the steps?
So I shared with Mike many years ago, I think because he was my boyfriend, and our relationship was going to go to places that I didn't know I wanted to go. Right. Because you know, my introduction to sex and sexual feelings and all of that was as a child on an adult's timetable.
Right.
So now Mike was my first boyfriend, my only boyfriend, now my husband. So I had no idea. I didn't know what was going to happen. I didn't know how I was going to feel. I didn't know any of that. And honestly, I don't even remember that day that I told him. There's now some days that I'm like, was I there? And people be like, yeah, you were 100% there. So back in 2011, maybe. I don't even recall the year now.
Yeah.
I was contacted by the police, who, and the back then when we had like actual house phones and it came up and on the display that it was the police calling.
Right.
It scared me at first because we lived in Barrie and it was Midland Police calling, and that's where I grew up, and that's where most of my family still lives. So it kind of scared me at first because I'm like thinking something happened to somebody in my family. Mm-hmm. But then the officer said, just, I forget now what she said, but basically just wanted to have a conversation about something that happened with this person. And so obviously right away I knew what she was talking about. So I think it was that same day that she actually came to my house in street clothes and a regular vehicle. Wasn't police anything, which was great. So she had told me that someone else had come forward with charges against this person. And they had mentioned me as a possible victim as well. So she wondered if I had anything to add or whatever. So of course I was super scared. But I knew that was my opportunity. And honestly, at the time, I was like, okay, I'm going to come forward and I'm going to lay my own charges against this person. And he's going to get, whatever punishment. And then I'll be good.
Right.
My life will be great. It'll be all fixed.
Yeah.
I was so wrong. So wrong. So she ended up, the police now do video statements. So I told her that I did have stuff to add. So she proceeded to tell me that it had to be a video statement. So I had to go into the police station and do a video statement. And so I had to book an appointment for that. So that was the following weekend. So I had to wait a full week. Like that week just stressed me out so bad. Like knowing this was coming up and, telling the police and doing it on video. Mm-hmm. So I went and did that. The other person that charged him came forward in like Thanksgiving around there of the previous year. This was in January. Oddly enough, the anniversary of my dad's death was when they called me. So the same day I gave my statement, they called him and gave him the opportunity to come into the police station freely.
Right.
And they said if he didn't, then they would go to his house and arrest him. So he did go in freely. And I didn't even know about the court process at the time. I was very naive to the process. I've never been through it.
No.
Never sat through any, didn't know anybody that went through a process like that. Mm-hmm. It was a pretty horrible process because it was, court dates kept getting remanded because he didn't have a lawyer and, remanded for whatever reason. Long story short, the court process was 2 full years. I'd take days off work to go to the courthouse and then it would get remanded, or I'd get called the day before and saying, oh, court's canceled. So he ended up pleading guilty, but he plea bargained. So some of the charges got dropped. Some of them stuck. And the day he entered his plea, I think it was mid-December of that year, and so I thought, okay, now he's going to go to jail, and he's going to be in jail for Christmas. Yay, he's going to get a little bit of hell that I've been through.
Yeah.
But no, they make another court date for sentencing. So we had to go back like a month later. It was mid-January that we went back to court and he was sentenced. So he only ended up with charges from 2 people, me being one of them, obviously.
Mm-hmm.
He got 6 months in jail, 2 years probation, and 10 years on the sex offender list.
Right.
And he ended up serving 4 months. He got out on good behavior.
Wow.
And that was like, so I was, when we were going through court, I had the option of signing up for this like automatic notifications that they would call you if he, like once he was in jail, if he put in for early parole, you were notified. Any parole hearing dates, you were notified, which we were. He, of course, applied for early parole. He was denied. The parole board saw right through him, which was awesome. That's what I was hoping for. And at that hearing, he turned everything around and blamed it on me. So when he pled guilty, I was, I guess I was relieved a little bit because it was his words, right? It was his words. He said it. It wasn't a judge or jury that said you're guilty. Right. He said it.
Yeah.
And he turned to us in the courtroom and he said, like he was sorry. We were good girls. We didn't do anything wrong. But at the parole hearing, he just flipped that all around and it was my fault.
Wow.
And he was a good person. He found his savior and he should get out on bail and get out of jail. Wow. And the parole board said she was how old?
Yeah, right.
Like all of these questions. And I'm like, thank you, thank you for seeing that. So he didn't get out at that time, but he did get out in 4 months because he served 2/3 of his sentence and
that's what
he got out. But he spent his 65th birthday in jail. Couldn't be home. I had to look at it that, I got a life sentence. No matter what happens, no matter how much healing I do, I have a life sentence. And he did 4 months.
Yeah.
But he spent birthday in jail. He didn't get to go home and sleep with his wife. He didn't get to have dinner with his family. He didn't get to choose when he got up or when he went to bed or what he could have to eat that day. He had some privileges taken away from him.
Yeah.
I think he's still alive. I haven't heard otherwise. So he was, him and his wife and children lived next door to my parents. My parents separated when I was 11 and they separated at the same time.
Right.
The 4 parents were friends. They used to play cards at each other's houses. The kids always stayed over at each other's houses. And so they both sets of parents separated at the same time and swapped spouses. Mm-hmm. So my mom moved into his house with him. His wife moved in with my dad. Wow. And the kids got to go wherever they wanted.
Right.
I chose to stay with my mom, and obviously I picked the wrong house at the time. But I didn't know about that, right? So I forget the question you even asked me where we were going.
You're answering it perfectly. You just keep going. You keep going. Like this story is, I hope that someone is listening and gets courage from it because you're a courageous woman. And
right. So that's where you were going. You asked me about what inspired me to share my story.
Exactly. And you're answering it perfectly. So
I went through the court process.
Yeah.
I had seen a counselor many, many years ago, was not even remotely close to being ready to talk about it.
Yeah.
And he was a psychiatrist or I don't remember his title, but he was a psychologist or psychiatrist, one of the two.
Right.
And I could fool him like no tomorrow.
Right.
Everything was good in my world again, right? That's what I wanted. He's like, excuse me, how's this? How's that? It's good. I'm good.
Everything's great. Yeah.
And I saw him for about 2 years, and it was my family doctor referred me to him. So it was covered under OHIP. And the last session I had with him, he looked at me. He always sat behind a desk.
Yeah.
And he looked at me and said, well, I was abused too, and look at me.
Right. How did
And
that
I'm
happen?
like, wow,
Yeah.
you're my hero.
Yeah.
But I walked out of there and I never made
Yeah.
another appointment. They never called me again.
No.
So after court, it was, a friend of mine was like, you really, really should get some more counseling. And I didn't want to go there. I didn't want that same experience.
Yeah.
And I also thought, what more can somebody tell me? Like, I've already been through this. No one can change it. I've charged him. He's been convicted and done his sentence. There's nothing more anyone can tell me.
Right.
But obviously I was super wrong. And so I went to my doctor again, got a referral for some counseling. So again, it was a doctor, can't remember his name, doesn't matter. And it was at the hospital in Barrie on the 4th floor. And I think a lot of hospitals, the 4th floor is the mental health wing.
Right.
And God, I didn't want to go. I so did not want to go. But I went and, I felt like I was like crawling in and like, don't look at me. You can't notice me here.
Everyone knows. Yeah.
So finally, when they called my name, I went into his office, and again, he was behind a desk. We spent probably 3, maybe 5 minutes. And so he told me who he was, blah, blah, blah. He asked me about me and why I was there. So I told him my name, told him why I was there. And I was also trying to cope with my dad's death as well. He died when he was 53. We lost quite a few years throughout our lives, got back together, and then he was taken away from me. Yeah. So I was kind of dealing with that as well. And so I told him about that, and I also told him about the abuse. And he looked at me and says, well, you don't appear like you're depressed or anything, so I'm not sure what I can do for you.
Right. Yeah.
And I'm like, oh, you got that within a 3-minute time span.
Right.
Okay. And I wanted to say, like, do you have any idea how hard it was for me to walk through that door?
Or share anything?
Yeah. Any idea?
Yeah.
So obviously I left there in tears, just broken again.
Yeah.
And I didn't want to go through that ever again. And this is part of why I talk about in my book as well, is like, you have to find the right counselor for you. Just because they're right for me doesn't mean they're right for you. You have to have that connection with that person to share openly, to talk about it, and so that, you just have that comfort level of sharing and talking and accepting and them acknowledging you. So I also did, after that, did some counseling through our EAP program at work, and it was online through email, which I really liked because, again, like I said earlier, I can write till my heart's content, and I can just pour my heart out.
Yeah, there's also some ambiguity to that. Like there's a wall. like there's a third wall that you don't have to go, like they don't see you, they don't see how you react, they can't like judge your body language, they can't, and you can rewrite, which is what I
Yeah.
like. You know, like
Yeah.
you can write it all down and then you go, yeah, no, that's too much. I'm going to change that. I'm going to change that word. I'm going to do this. So yeah, no, sorry, I interrupted, but I get that.
No, you're absolutely right. It's,
Yeah.
you know, nobody was staring at me. Nobody was like watching every move I made. No, like, yeah. And it was nice because I could write back whenever I wanted. If it was 3 a.m,
Right.
7 a.m, 10 at night, didn't matter when I responded to her. And this counselor that I had, her name was Mimi. She was fantastic, like unbelievable. She was definitely in the right field. She started every email back to me with a quote that was appropriate to what I've told her in the session before.
Yeah.
But unfortunately with EAP, as you might know, it's short term.
Yeah, it's 6 sessions, I believe.
Yeah, so she extended it. I think I did like maybe 9-10 sessions with her. She really kind of stretched the boundaries on that. So then she felt like I needed something more, so she gave me a name of a couple of different counselors. So one of them I recognized the name, so I wasn't fussy on calling that person. The other girl, her name was Christina Jantz, in Barrie. Mm-hmm. So I messaged her. She responded. She was super comfortable with talking about the topics I wanted to talk about. Yeah. And I'm like, okay, great. You know, I'll be in touch, because I wasn't quite ready to make that appointment.
Right.
I was afraid because I've already been through 2 really horrible.
And this would be going back face to face, right?
Right.
Yeah.
So I think ended up being a couple of months that I finally like, you know what, I really need to get some help with this. Because it was a lot, right? Dealing with core, like everything just came to the surface that it was like, it's amazing what you forget when you bury it way down low.
Yeah.
So I finally made the appointment with Christina, and I went, and it was, again, every step of the way was like driving there, parking the car, opening the door, getting out. I was like, no, little voices, right? No, don't do this. No, don't do this.
Don't do it. Stop. Yeah.
Yeah. So I finally went in, and I had to wait in the hall for her previous session to finish. And then, so finally it was my turn. I went in. And typical fashion of mine throughout my life, you know, she, you know, introduced herself and, you know, asked me how I was doing. And my famous sentence was, I'm fine or I'm good. There was those 2 different statements, and they both meant something different, but it was along the same lines. I'm good. And right away I was like, well, I guess I'm not, because I wouldn't be sitting here in front of you if I was.
Yeah.
So I started telling her my story, and honestly, it was not even 5 minutes. And I was going to continue, and she's like, let me just stop you there. And she's like, I want to acknowledge what it took for you to walk through my door.
Right.
And I didn't tell her any of my story of the past therapist and what I went through.
Yeah.
She didn't know any of that. And I'm like sitting there looking at her like, what?
Yeah.
What did you just
say? Wait. Yeah.
And at that moment, I knew she was the one for me. Like,
totally.
I needed to be working with her and, you know, getting my shit together.
Yeah.
And I saw her for 3 full years. Mike saw her. We saw her as a couple.
Right.
Absolutely fantastic. I'm still friends with her to this day. She has a Facebook group. Talks about different things. She's always, you know, every once in a while she'd message me and she'd be like, hey, I just been thinking about you, and it's always at the right moment. Her intuition is just
Right.
in this world.
Yeah.
And she's like, oh, I was thinking about you. And like every time she's done that, something has happened, not necessarily anything, bad or whatever,
Right.
but she's had a bad day or a bad week or, something didn't go right. And she picks it up. And I don't know how she does it, but she's honestly fantastic.
So I'm just going to pause it. I think it's super important to like mention that, like Wendy just said, like therapists are just like friends. Like some friends are amazing, and you can be you're superficial with them. Other friends you're deep with, and therapists are no different. Therapists go to school and they get a degree. That does not mean they're good at what they do, not even a little bit. And they can still get into prominent positions. They can still be leaders of the community because of what they know and how they present themselves. But when you get brass tacks and you start talking to them, they are not. So when you go in, and it's devastating when you go in to see a therapist and they're the wrong ones, because like she said, and like your therapist that you love said, it takes a lot to walk in that door. It takes a lot to walk in that door. And so you just have to walk in knowing this might not be the right one. And then, if it's not, I'm going to go somewhere else. And I encourage everyone out there, if you've run into a therapist that's the wrong one, they say the wrong thing, or they do the wrong thing, or they're just not someone that you trust, because I know I've been to people that, not therapists, but I've been with people that I don't trust. And you just know right away, and you're like, I'm out. There is someone for you. There's someone for everyone. There are some really good therapists. My therapist right now, I've told you profiteers before, Allison, she's amazing. I see her tomorrow, actually, which is very convenient for this. And she's lovely. She's active listening. She doesn't do that thing, the counselor thing that Pat and I always talk about, where it's like, how are you feeling? How did that make you feel? She actually just listens, and then she asks like questions that make you talk more. And then at the end, kind of surmises what you say. And it's lovely. It's beautiful. And you'll find that. Just take the time for it. EAP in Ontario, I think, is the only place that is. It's wonderful. You get 6 sessions. You call a number, and you don't have to tell them anything. What you do is you say, I really need a counselor. And they'll ask you what type of counselor. So you just, like I gushed when I was looking for a counselor at the time. And they're like, sir, I'm just like the answering service. I don't need to know what the hell, what's wrong with you. And then someone actually calls you, and then you tell them your story, and then they will give you a list of counselors to choose from. And then you get six sessions that are paid for. And then after that, it's very expensive. Like I pay $170 a session, worth every dollar. But
yeah.
Anyway, that's how it works. That's what Wendy was talking about, the EAP. I encourage everyone, if you have it. I think everyone in Ontario has it. And it, if you are, maybe you're silent and you're a survivor of abuse. I would encourage you to read the book that Wendy mentioned, which was
Courage to Heal.
Courage to Heal, and also her book, Sharing, because they're both wonderful books. Anyway, I just wanted to get that out because I think it's important. Like that, I have worked with people where they're like, oh, I saw a counselor, they were awful. I'm like, yeah, I know, but that's one counselor. Pat and I had this conversation, actually.
I kind of sat back and, I appreciate, Wendy, your story is fantastic. And I hope that, individuals that have an opportunity to hear that tonight, it's a very powerful story. And I appreciate you coming here and sharing that with us. With that said, professionally, personally, a number of things I have dealt with, counselors, therapists, that sort of deal. More so professionally than personally myself. But most of the ones that I have dealt with professionally are awful. Like they're terrible. They don't understand the concepts of just innate humanity, I think. And I think that there's an attitude problem that is people go looking for answers. And I think where James has found some solace and some comfort with his therapist is that he's just talking and he's sharing his story. Whereas if you're going like, hey, fix me, doc, you're putting a lot of credit in somebody that is you know, you're as fallible, if not more than yourself, potentially even more damaged than you feel. So the ones that I've dealt with professionally, I have a big struggle with. But like I say, is that I'm glad, Wendy, that you had those experiences. I know James, in and of himself, has had, you know, some fantastic things, and it's a very powerful. I give you a lot of credit. Well, both of you tonight. Tonight was a bit of an opening experience for everybody. We didn't kind of know where this was going to go when we first started. James, obviously, you know that it sounds like you've had some experiences down this line as well, and I'm sure over the next while that, you know, as you find your strength and your voice for all these sorts of things, you know, buddy, I'm so proud of you, and there's so many different facets of your life. It's ridiculous. This one here, who's known you for a little bit for a while, I think she's the same way. She's nodding there beside me. These journeys that you go on, the powerfulness, the finding yourself and finding your voice is your own personal journey. And Wendy, you're a few steps ahead of this ogre over here, but it all comes with time. And tonight, I think, was an amazing opportunity to have you on. Again, thank you so much for coming. It kind of gives a little bit more of a background in regards to what your family is as well, right? Like you very much, when you first started talking there about, you know, taking on and nourishing and nurturing that family and who they are as people, you know, you can see where that is with your children and your husband and all of that. So again, I thank you so much for sharing. And James, we're going to work on you. We're going to get you out there too, and you know, find yourself as well. So that's awesome.
Yeah, well, we'll see. Yeah, yeah. No,
When time is right. Right. The time has to be right for everyone.
Right.
And mine, like, I came across Lisa by accident through my cousin, and it was like, you know, it's just, I didn't really think about it, honestly, until I hit send, until I was done my story completely. And it was hard because it was, you know, bringing up a lot of stuff that I didn't talk about before, nobody knew about. And there's stuff that came up that I didn't even remember. And still to this day, like, for example, the day my mom made the choice of moving out of his house, I was there that day. I couldn't tell you one thing about that day.
Right.
Not one thing. And that always kind of baffled me as to, like, that should have been a really happy day for me.
Yeah.
But I just, like, looking back, I was like, we lived at his house and then we lived over here.
Right.
And I don't remember packing my stuff. I don't remember loading up the car. I don't remember any of that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. It's crazy what your mind does to you.
Your brain does protect you. It keeps things away from you because it knows you can't handle it at the time, and then it brings it back in the oddest of moments, the oddest of times, for sure. So we are going to have, well, we're trying to have Lisa on. Wendy has been kind enough to introduce Soaring Profits to Lisa Browning. Yeah. So we are going to have Lisa Browning on, and so she can explain her books and stuff like that. But so I am sure there are other women and men out there that would love to share some of their story. Pat himself, he has a lot of wonderful, inspiring stories about what he's done in his life, because he has done a great deal of wonderful things. How would you go about it? Like, I have the link rolling at the bottom there. 1,000 trees. So it was 1,000 trees, the umbrella of all the books?
Yes.
Yeah.
So that's Lisa's website, and she has a bookstore on there, so you can go in and order any of the books that she's been involved in. She also runs an online magazine, which the link is there as well on 1000trees.com. And then she also talks about any upcoming anthologies that she's doing. And she's always doing them in support of something. So I talked about, like, our first volume, we all chose a charity.
Right.
That was super ambitious and difficult to organize and promote. So now I think Lisa does one charity per book. She kind of chooses something that she's passionate about it, or somebody else has come up with it. And so she just shares profits with that one charity or organization or whatever.
Now, do you get money from the books as well, or it's just the?
Not really. So I have a bunch of copies of Volume 1, the one I wrote in. So I do sell those at face value of $20.
Right.
That covers the printing costs. And then I put all the proceeds, 100% of the balance of that cost goes to my award.
Right.
And like I said, sometimes I just give books away.
Yeah.
So if I meet somebody that I really feel like they would benefit from the book, I can't charge them. I'm just like, here you go.
Nice.
You know, it's not an easy read. And I tell everybody that if you get any of these volumes,
there's trigger warnings galore.
They are not easy to read because they are real, true life stories.
Even if you haven't
just take time.
Even if you haven't experienced the stuff in the book, they're still difficult reads. Yeah.
100%. And even me, like I wrote in this book and I can, like when I got it, I only read like 2 stories at a time and then I had to put it down. I just couldn't do it.
It's definitely that book. Yeah.
Yeah. Whether they're triggers for you or just, they just get you.
Mm-hmm. Definitely worth reading. Don't get me wrong. It's just, you're going to read a story and then you're going to put it down and process for a while.
Definitely.
Maybe for weeks, maybe for days. So anyone that Lisa, so you contact Lisa and go, hey, I have a story on the website. So you like go to her contact and go, hey, I have a story that I think would be really good in this book. And then she responds, and does she like ask you all the details about it, or does she like get you to write it, and then she's like, I'm really sorry you didn't make the cut?
No, I mean, to be honest with you, I'm not 100% sure. Looking back, I think I told her what my story was about, but no details, just the topic.
Yeah.
And I'm not aware that she doesn't accept the story. She does all the editing. So like sentence formation, grammar, spelling, all of that stuff she does. Formatting, different, like if you mess up your paragraphs or whatever, she does all that. And then she sends you back an edited copy and gets you to look it over, make sure she didn't miss anything, whatever. And then it might go back and forth a few times.
Sure.
And then when you give her the final thumbs up, like I don't think she weeds out stories like that. I think she's super grateful and inspired by everyone who wants to share, because that's, kind of her mission is, let's share, let's uplift people, let's come together and talk about anything.
If she doesn't weed out stories, that's pretty amazing, because it wasn't a story that I didn't think was great. So for that to happen is pretty amazing. If she doesn't like at some point go, dude, you should not write. You should never write.
This is not your thing.
This is not your thing. Maybe try going on the podcast, Soaring Profits. I hear those guys will take anybody.
Sir, step away from the computer. Sir, you should not be writing. What is wrong with you? More.
Well, that's amazing. I love it. We're already like, I don't know, very long. And you know what? This is a very important topic. And when your book launches, we can have you back on and we can chat about it. And you can tell us all about it. We'll go like have an official book launching. That could be fun. Pat and I have never done a book launching, like a real one. So we could do it. You could have the book. And also, I lost your book in the separation. So I need another copy. I just thought about that. So I will purchase from you at the wedding.
That's expensive alimony.
Someone's getting married. That was expensive alimony.
Yeah.
Yeah. Right? If anyone should have got it, should have been me.
Right.
100%.
Right? Yeah.
But
Wendy, thank you so much for joining us tonight. Again, an inspirational story. It was a pleasure having you. This is obviously our first time meeting. I know that I've kind of met the rest of the band, if you will. Yeah, but no, I appreciate you coming on, and it's a very powerful story. And I think that there's going to be somebody out there tonight that's listened to that and has, a different viewpoint on where they are, an hour and a half ago from where they are now. So I thank you for that. It's a powerful story, and I appreciate the resolve that it takes for someone to come out and do that. That's impressive. I very much appreciate that. So James and I always do at the end of the night when we do these lives. Yeah. We tend to kind of put our guest on a bit of a hot seat, and I think that you've been an inspiration tonight, so I don't think it'll be too hard for you. But we have a send off at the end of our little spiel here. So when we wrap it up, I'm going to call on you, and if you have any brief words of wisdom, a quote, something inspirational that you'd like to say, that's kind of when we wrap it up, and you'll know when we do it. So, pal, James, thank you, buddy. As always, it was a pleasure. Profiteers, check us out later this week. We've got lots of information coming down the pipe in regards to a number of different things. Obviously, Wendy, thank you so much. And as always, for me, thanks again, folks. Let's make some money together.
Wendy, absolute inspiration. The more I hear, the more I am inspired by your courage and just the fact that you are more than enough for any person. And your family is proof of that. The way they thrive and the way their joy and their happiness. And I still don't understand why you're with Mike, though. Like that's the only thing that troubles me is this Mike guy. I don't get it. No,
I think it's gonna last.
It's gonna last. Do tell. No, Mike is awesome too. But no, you are an inspiration. I'm trying to make light of whatever's going on here. My brain's rolling. Anyway, Wendy, thank you so much for coming on. I know you were nervous, but you killed it. This was amazing, and you are more than enough. And I love you more than words can say, and I will always love you. And I am so proud of you. And like I say, profiteers, now I'm a little bit more broken than you knew before, but let's heal our minds, bodies, and souls together.
And Wendy?
Thank you so much for having me on, and quite the introduction to you, Pat. That meeting me first, and you get my story
absolutely
right off the bat.
Yep.
Yeah.
And it took James, I don't know, about 25 years.
Yes.
Maybe 20.
Maybe. Yeah.
But honestly, it's just everyone has a story to tell. I shared on Facebook today a thing about let's not bring people down and point out their faults and something they did wrong or something that is wrong in their life, or a mistake that they made, because they already know that. We all know that. We need to point out the good, and we are all worthy. We are all enough, and that might look different for everybody, but the bottom line is we're all enough, and we all have a story to tell, and let's share stories. And and I just want people to know they're not alone. They are so not alone.
Absolutely.
Wendy, thank you, my dear. It was an absolute pleasure, and we will chat soon. As always, folks, thanks for joining us. Like, share, and subscribe, and we'll chat with you again soon. Take care, folks. Have a good night.